So I'll just do some brief intros and then we'll dive into the panel discussion. And so Catherine McLean currently serves as corporate counsel for Strip, which is a Y Combinator company and doing billions of dollars in payment transactions for online businesses with its platform offering. She serves on the board of a public cultivation facility service provider and 2 private FinTech companies. She's previously held legal and compliance roles ranging in both public and private companies as a revenue-focused attorney and regulatory professional helping grow new business lines as well as ground-up ventures, startup ventures. She's a graduate of UC Berkeley, go Bears, and Santa Clara University School of Law and lives with her family and dog Jax in Castro Valley, California. Amy Nguyen is the founder and CEO of Bootstrap Legal, which automates the drafting of legal paperwork for real estate private equity, syndication, and crowdfunding deals. Previously, she was a partner at Crowdfunding Lawyers and general counsel at Patch of Land, a real estate debt crowdfunding platform. Amy is the founder and co-organizer of Legal Hackers LA, which has programs around the intersection of law and technology. Amy was named one of the 10 women to watch in legal tech by the American Bar Association and was nominated as a finalist for Corporate Counsel of the Year in 2015 by the LA Business Journal. Amy has also worked in international regulatory and trade policy affairs at the U.S. Department of Commerce and was a Presidential Management Fellow at the U.S. Department of State and U.S. Department of Transportation. She holds an LLM in Public International Law from the London School of Economics and Political Science, and a JD from USC, and a BA in Biological Sciences also from USC. Please join me in welcoming Catherine and Amy. So we'll start pretty broad, and I just want to ask the question, what is FinTech? And
FinTech is my life, Armin. But just for the audience's sake, first and foremost, I wanted to say hi, Glendale, because I was so motivated by that presentation by Dan, and just thought maybe the next message should be hi, Glendale. But beyond that, FinTech, just simply stated, is financial technology, and it's the innovation in a space that's traditionally been the type of banking or financial services that most individuals and companies have enjoyed. It is an area that has provided a great opportunity for technology companies and other service type organizations to provide faster, better, more efficient, and more secure manners of conducting your own personal financial business. I currently work at a very FinTech-focused company called Stripe. It's located in San Francisco. Yay, a Stripe user. It is a YC Combinator incubated company that started out about 6 years ago. I'll take time to do a shameless plug here. Started by 2 brothers who dropped out of college. We've been in business for 6 years and have grown to about 860 employees. We are located in 19 countries and serve about 100 different locations, 25 countries specifically. What do we actually do? Well, it is a SaaS company that provides various APIs to help online businesses grow and continue to serve those businesses as they become large, substantial companies. The primary focus is in helping you get paid, probably the most important part of starting a business and running a business. We offer payment methods for receiving bank account transfers, credit card transactions, Bitcoin payments, as well as all different types of alternative payments throughout the world based on the actual geography. I've been there for about 2.5 years and have thoroughly enjoyed watching the growth.
And what is FinTech to you, Amy?
I think to me, FinTech is anything that combines the intersection of money and technology, right? And so you can have a very broad scope. It can be anything from payment systems like Stripe. It can be anything related to blockchain, cryptocurrency. It can be crowdfunding, which is, the raising of capital online. I think money cuts through so many different avenues. Even today, you're seeing robo-advisors, right? The Betterments and personal finance companies of the world. There's a bunch of fintech companies out there that are now trying to do better education around budgeting and saving money. Acorn is another one of those applications. And so it's one of those things that I think just really touches everyone's lives in a very personal way.
Great. And Amy, let me ask you, how important is the sharing economy and the foundation of what you're trying to build at Bootstrap Legal?
Sure. So a little bit about Bootstrap Legal first. I am a securities attorney. What that means is I help, startups, entrepreneurs, any type of business, when they're going out and raising capital from private investors, they're selling a security, and so they have to have all this legal documentation. Now, with any transaction, right, whether you're purchasing something or whether you are raising money from investors, there's this concept called transactional cost. And the whole concept about making markets very efficient is let's try and see if we can lower that transactional cost. Well, today with raising money, it's still very, very expensive, especially on the legal side. In my industry right now, if you wanted to raise capital, say $1 million to go acquire a piece of property, that's going to cost you minimum of depending on the attorney you use, $10,000 to $25,000 in legal fees just to raise that amount. And it's an incredible amount, right? And if you think about it, there's actually a lot of small real estate transactions out there where it doesn't make sense to pay that minimum $10,000 to $25,000. And so what we're really trying to do is to automate some of the legal process so we can bring down the transactional cost, which means we can actually deliver more access to these types of legal services for people in the future. In terms of the sharing economy, and I'm going to define this broadly as anything where the internet kind of brings communities together. One thing that I focused on in the past couple years has been crowdfunding, right? And crowdfunding is very interesting because whether you're talking about rewards-based crowdfunding, so that's Kickstarter, Indiegogo, or whether you're talking about investment crowdfunding, which is a relatively new concept, but you're actually getting a return on an investment for the money that you're putting at a particular campaign. The sharing economy is very interesting there because you're seeing how what the effect is of communities when it comes to raising capital. Traditionally, this has been a very private process, right? A startup or a restaurant or whatever will go to different private investors, and they're doing it, very in a very private manner. They're not going out there and blasting LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook and telling everybody that they're raising money. Today they can because of a lot of different and new laws. And so what you're seeing as an effect of that is where there are products or services or companies where maybe the private investor or angel investors don't see that opportunity, but the crowd loves the concept, right? And they really latch onto it. You're seeing those ideas now start to get funding. I've invested in some crowdfunding deals, and I think it's really interesting to see how this kind of brings different communities together. So for example, I invested in a restaurant up in San Francisco last year. And so when Christmas time rolled around, we were like, oh, well, what do we get our relatives up in San Francisco? And we thought, oh, let's get them gift certificates at that restaurant, right? Because we're helping our own investment, and then we're bringing our relatives over to that investment. So you're kind of looking at how you harness the power of community.
Great. And Catherine, how's the sharing economy impacting Stripe, a much larger company?
So I think Amy touched upon the social aspect and not having to look at curated presentations or opportunities, but really making it open to everyone generally. The sharing economy has taken advantage of the opportunity to share stories, if anything, and find that common bond, whatever it may be, whether it's your interest in food, whether it's your interest in helping a particular cause or individual or an educational, bend or whatnot, or even just helping to improve some way of life. with Stripe, making it easy for these types of companies to get up and running. Again, trying to break down those barriers and obstacles. We've seen a lot of companies grow, as Amy mentioned, like a Kickstarter crowdfunding platform, as well as others that we're all pretty familiar with, like an Airbnb sharing platform. If you think about it, there was a purpose there of helping folks to create more opportunities for places to stay and for income streams. In addition, believe it or not, we were looking back and noticing that eBay, of all companies, was actually the start of all of this. And they've led it to be very successful for individuals to create businesses themselves. At Stripe, what we're finding is as these companies grow, there are more and more needs or obstacles that they're encountering. So we're trying our best to find solutions to help those companies tackle those next situations. Initially, it could be just how do we get payment? Next, it could be how do we get more funding, as Amy mentioned, and how do we capture the right market for that? From there, it could be how do we provide employee benefits now that we're growing and getting a larger team and whatnot. It's pretty exciting to be in this intersection of not having the barriers and trying to find solutions to appeal to a larger crowd.
Great. So I spent a lot of my time on the fundraising side, deploying capital, raising funds, and now there's this whole other area emerging, not only in crowdfunding but also cryptocurrencies, and how it's going to mesh into the current system. And Amy, if you can touch upon how the sharing economy is affecting crowdfunding and Bitcoin and cryptocurrency areas.
Yeah, so if you guys have been following any of the tech, publications recently, if you look at your LinkedIn today, likely there's at least one person on there posting about ICOs. ICOs are like the big craze of 2017. For those of you who haven't been following it, an ICO is an initial coin offering or a token sale. Basically, a traditional company, whether it's a startup or a film or a restaurant or whatever, when they went and raised money, right, they would likely offer equity or debt or royalty or revenue sharing in that film, that restaurant, that startup. An ICO is a little bit different. Instead, it can be a company, although it doesn't necessarily have to be, and I think we're going to talk about decentralization later, but basically it is, at the very least, a group of people who come up with some sort of project idea, usually based on blockchain technology, and they want to raise money for their project. So it's very project-based as opposed to company-based. And so what they do instead of giving away equity or giving away debt is they will basically create their own digital asset. It's a digital token, essentially, kind of like Bitcoin or Ethereum, but not quite the same thing. Usually it's in the form of what we call a utility token. So think of it as like a digital Chuck E. Cheese coin or a digital Pokemon card, right? You can use it for something on that platform for that project. And you've just seen like crazy raises for this. Like, there's been at least a couple in the 200 million mark. There's a lot of capital going into this right now. The really interesting thing about, I think, ICOs and token sales is the fact that no longer are we necessarily working with a company. There doesn't have to be a company behind it at all. It could be a group of individuals. That group of individuals doesn't have to be in the same town or the same city or the same country. It could be like 5 people working remotely on a project across the globe, right? And so it's very decentralized. So they can't give away equity. They can't give away debt because there's not necessarily a company. And so they are raising money with a limited supply of digital tokens, selling that. People are buying it and speculating on the value, but hopefully are able to in the future use it to transact on the platform. But where you see the sharing aspect come in is, I can't really think of so many examples before today where you could see, discrete projects raising a lot of capital where there's a completely disparate team, right? It's not like, oh, we're all living in the same apartment together, we're in the same office every day. It is just, maybe you've never even met your co-founders on your coin project, and that's completely normal now.
Now, Catherine, how does this fit in the current and previous banking industry and environment?
So it's really interesting, and as Amy mentioned, it's allowing us to just not worry about location. Geography is unlimited now, so it's pretty exciting. Meanwhile, you have traditional financial service institutions, kind of your brick and mortar banks and credit unions or whatnot, really struggling to try and capture or continue to retain the market share that they have. They can't continue to build new buildings or office locations, yet they're wanting to serve this type of community. And I think this is where tech companies, FinTech companies, entrepreneurs can really push the limits and come together and see where information can be shared, where there will have to be an intersection where, different cryptocurrencies will have to somehow be converted into fiat currencies. And so there has to be a blend of the existing financial services world with all of, as I'll throw out yet another buzzword, the gig economy. And it's funny because I've heard the word gig economy used and thrown out, and I had to understand what GIG stood for, and of course I was overthinking it and realized gig was just the gig. It was a temporary gig, and that's how people are being employed now. Most of us struggle, I know, to live in this beautiful state, and so we're doing more than just one job, or we're doing other, consulting work and everything. And this has, again, expanded where we do work, how we do work, who we do work with, and I think banks, government, everyone is going to have to figure out a way to capture some of that and continue to provide services or join forces. Being in a FinTech company myself, we rely on banks, and I can't describe a single day that doesn't go on where we don't fight. We fight about everything. It's like, why do you need paper? Why do you need signatures? Why do you need, code, passwords that are 8 digits long and whatnot? There are other mechanisms in place. There's other technology that can be used. So the constant push and pull is actually a pretty exciting opportunity. As most of us know, everything needs to be faster and quicker and more convenient because we are all operating in that gig economy doing so many things at once. I think it's a great opportunity for companies like Amy's and many of those represented here to provide those services. Really excited.
It'll allow me to dig in a little bit deeper
Sure.
and looking at what's next, just given that things are rapidly evolving. And with the prevalence of data and artificial intelligence now, how do you exactly balance that with safety, given all the recent stuff that's been happening?
Interesting that you bring that up, Armin. I think that is the focus that the tech companies are working with the U.S. government as well as, existing companies. And I think it will be a matter of how do we safely and securely share that. Other countries are actually ahead of us, believe it or not. I'm sure Amy can speak of that as well because she's probably been exposed to it, but other countries are imposing very strict requirements as to the way you share data, the way you store data. And it's to respect the individual's privacy, it's to secure that as best we can. I actually think leveraging technology like blockchain will even help that more in the future. To your other point about artificial intelligence and whatnot, I see we use a lot of that within our own business in terms of risk assessment and risk mitigation and fraud detection. But at the end of the day, there is the knowledge of the data, and then there is the wisdom of the data. So I think those two will intersect and have the human aspect come through and continue to monitor the artificial intelligence. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens there.
Great. And Amy, if I may switch gears a little bit, can you talk a little bit about what you were alluding to earlier in the decentralization of communities and all the different aspects that you might see that, or the ones that you want to highlight and where we're headed next?
Yeah, so I think it's really been very interesting to see the evolution of how communities or even affiliate communities have been built over the past not even a couple years, longer than that, right? Like, pre-internet, your community was your neighbors, the people who lived on the same street as you, everyone who was in the same, I don't know, parent-teacher association. I remember with the advent of Twitter, like, for me, I could suddenly find other like-minded people who were interested in the same subject using hashtags, right? And today, they always say who you go into business with is a very important decision. You don't want to end up with a business partner who's going to screw you over. But today, you're seeing people who are going out, raising money, working on the same projects, and they're like not even close to being in the same time zone. And that blows my mind, right? And it is a lot easier today because there's all these online collaboration tools, right? But it's interesting to see how these communities have come together. I'll give you one example. I come specifically from the crowdfunding community. And traditionally, if you're raising money for film or to put together a documentary or something like that, it tends to be really hard if you want, the investors who fund this sort of stuff, first of all, like, it's very much a passion project. They know they're not going to make a lot of money from it, right? But to the extent that they treat it as an investment, if you're highlighting, for example, a specific minority community, whether ethnic or special interest or otherwise, like, it's just been really hard to get funding for that in the past. Now, with crowdfunding and with all this social media and everything that's kind of connecting people in different geographies, but with the same special interest, I recently talked to someone in the crowdfunding community that focuses on film, and he said, wow, crowdfunding is actually a great tool for us because for the first time, we can go out and we can raise money for, African American films. For, there was I think there was like a James Van Der Beek film on the Taiwanese diaspora, things like that normally just would not get funding.
Great. So thank you both for coming and offering your insights. And now we'll open it up to questions. Not all at once. Jennifer.
This isn't a fair question to ask because I know Catherine.
Same last name, I must say.
Yes. But Catherine, you're from the Bay Area. I was hoping that you might be able to touch on maybe some differences that you're seeing just in funding in general in the Bay Area compared to what you're hearing down in Southern California.
Sure, I'll speak a bit about that. I think the San Francisco Bay Area, also known as Silicon Valley, and how it just continues to grow in mileage, is one where companies start up. There are founders that I think earlier even Al mentioned how many companies he had founded over his career, where the founders are able to procure funds just from their reputation and their history. So there are lots of opportunities there to receive initial investment. I would say Southern California, or here particularly even in Glendale, what I've been hearing just in the people I'm meeting is there's an opportunity here to leverage the skills, the intelligence in areas such as healthcare. Armin and I were just talking backstage about just the exciting developments in healthcare and healthcare services that is happening in this area. Earlier, even Dan's presentation, in terms of the scientific community, it is so ripe for the opportunity. And I think, if anything, to Amy's point as well, sharing your ideas, sharing your passion will create an opportunity to bring more of that here. I previously worked for Silicon Valley Bank, and that is a financial institution known to invest in a lot of startup companies. And I know for a fact that they established a large office location here in Southern California as well. So we definitely see that the investing community, the innovative community is growing here beyond the geographic boundaries of Silicon Valley.
I'll add one more thing to that is, maybe I'm biased, but I actually think that LA-based startup companies are much more revenue-focused than the Bay Area ones. And I think that's just a result of the ecosystem. Like, for a long time, until, even very recently, there wasn't as much money down here, right? People were flying back and forth up to the Bay Area to go try and raise money. And so because of that dearth in capital, companies knew that in order to survive, they needed to be bringing in revenue. Whereas I think there is so much capital in the Bay Area that, I think people are a lot more dependent on continually raising money, and they may be focused on traction, but not necessarily revenue.
And I agree with that in my experience as well. And the one thing that I've noticed, just in going through this whole Tech Week process as well, and last year, this year, every kind of area has its own little ecosystem, and everybody kind of knows each other as well. I mean, you still meet new people, but it's like Ara at Service Titan, we knew him from college, from when he was at Stanford, I was at Berkeley. Alice Sion and I have crossed paths a lot as well. And a lot of the attorneys and a lot of the service providers and a lot of the fundraising folks as well, you get to know each other and you build that ecosystem. So if you're already in Glendale and there's plenty of resources in Glendale. There's companies with like Service Titan that have raised $100 million and they're on Brand Boulevard. So it's not just reserved for Silicon Valley or even Silicon Beach. Are more local folks, and we've got Pasadena right next door as well. And so it really, I think, comes down to the entrepreneur, and if they're going to make it, they're going to do what they can. But then, certainly they don't have to necessarily go on a Southwest flight and go schlepping up and down Sand Hill looking for funds. There's plenty being built here to fill that on the back end.
If I can add too, I think it's very fortunate to have a lot of great schools in this geography to provide great talent. And I know for a fact that we struggle constantly in terms of hiring developers and software engineers and just all forms of talent. And it's limited in the Bay Area. And here there's just such an opportunity with great schools and great companies that provide experienced talent pool. So.
Questions? Sure.
Without giving away any trademark ideas, I would love to hear if you kind of had ideas that you see in the future, because I'm sure the companies are like, oh, there's a possibility of this, but the technology is there yet. Have you guys had again, don't give away the secret you plan to do, but it comes to me as well in this industry where I think, oh, in here, this could be possible. I'm not going to have to get from here to there. So what is a great idea you guys have? What do you have in mind?
So, we earlier talked very briefly about artificial intelligence and blockchain technologies, and for the past 2 years, those have been very hot, investable things. But at the same time, if you actually take a look at the state of, for example, artificial intelligence technology today, the very, very big companies have the best AI people. The best AI people cost a ton of money, right? And a lot of the smaller companies that are out there claiming that they do AI are doing, a lot lower end, not groundbreaking AI. So I think, for example, AI is one of those areas where, if they can continue to accelerate the development of the actual technology, there is a ton you can do. I often have young people come up to me and say oh, I'm afraid my job's gonna get automated in the future because everyone's talking about this future of work issue. What should I concentrate on? And so if you look at the development of what AI works in, I always tell people, go do the things where AI doesn't work, right? Anything that requires judgment or emotional intelligence or something that's very highly bespoke, that's where I would look. And then if you look at blockchain, it's a strange industry because it's completely invented by technologists and totally exists outside the realm of the real world, right? People talk about smart contract this, smart contract that, but let's be honest, how many of you have actually used a smart contract, right? Anyone? Okay, point taken, right? And so you're seeing today a lot of interesting things in the blockchain cryptocurrency community that would never pass muster in the real world. The DAO, the Decentralized Autonomous Organization, getting hacked for $50 million and people just sitting there and being like, oh, we don't know what to do. that doesn't happen in the real world. Or all these ICOs that are getting hacked when they're raising money like $7-8 million at a time, and the founders are like, oh, sorry, like, I guess the money's not coming into our pocket. Like, that just doesn't happen in the real world. So I feel like these two technologies in particular are still at the very brink of their actual usability and their actual, I don't think we've even seen the beginning of what these two types of technologies can do.
Well, if I can add on to that, in my mind, and not giving away anything, the identity-related technology that will continue to develop. I think we've just scratched the surface in terms of alternative methods of authentication and identity verification. And there's more and more of that coming out. And the more we develop that, the more agnostic it becomes, whether you're not codependent on particular physical pieces of paper or identification. I think that will help just geographies just improve our personal lives in terms of feeling secure. So that would be an area.
And the other thing I would add is there are, every time a new technology is created, it creates a whole ton of other new issues, right? So now, like, cybersecurity is a big one. One aspect that I personally find really fascinating is for all these social media companies where, it's very content-based, a lot of them have these terms of service or terms and conditions of use, and you're not supposed to harass, threaten, intimidate other users, right? But let's be honest, like, people are doing that on Twitter and Facebook and Reddit all day long, and these content companies are really struggling with figuring out, hey, how can I make sure, like, Russians aren't buying ads? Hey, how can I make sure people aren't, posting videos of them, like, killing other people? How do we do that? Maybe with AI, maybe without hiring buildings full of people who, for 12 hours a day, have to stare at this content, and then we have to, like, offer them therapists. Like, that, as an issue, is, I think, a crazy one.
We just let them play with Legos. I don't know.
There you go. There you go. Yes.
Hi, I'm still trying to wrap my head around blockchain technology, and I'm curious how close you think that blockchain will help creators, let's say on Patreon or Indiegogo, Kickstarter, as an alternative to just using regular currency.
So I think you're specifically talking about different types of cryptocurrency, right? I mean, I'm hearing today that there are transactions where people are buying real estate with cryptocurrency. So all these things are definitely possible. It's just that outside of very tech-friendly ecosystems, it hasn't picked up a lot yet. Yeah.
I would agree. I think that it is another form of payment, and people in the community that are comfortable with it are willing to use it as a form of payment. It goes back to the start of currencies generally, of bartering or trading for services, and there's quite a bit of it going on. And it's interesting. I think we were just talking about who will join and recognize it. We were talking about Goldman Sachs has a department focused on it. At the same time, Jamie Dimon of Chase Bank has just said it's fraud. So it's still questionable.
But I think there's still a lot of fundamental issues with the architecture of the technology. So for example, first of all, because it's all decentralized, you might not know who you're sending money to, right? Someone might give you like a Bitcoin or an Ethereum wallet address that is off by one number, and then you send it there and it never comes back. You don't know who you've sent it to, right? And so, like with credit card payments, you can reverse a transaction. With cryptocurrencies, you're hearing every day like transactions where people send $1 million and it just disappears.
You take the risk.
I think it'll be interesting to see how many people trade cryptocurrencies as a form of generating wealth versus going and buying a pizza with it. And so there's still, I think, a little bit of evolution to truly use it as a currency. And it'll be interesting to see how it evolves. But whoever's involved with it, all right, they're buying, they're holding, they're trading it. okay, now go to Brand Boulevard and go buy something with it, and don't use it as a speculative asset. So until it's a little bit more stable, for me personally, I don't know enough about it to dabble in it as much, but I do realize that it's not mainstream enough that people are using it as a real currency, just given that it's so, it's got a whole host of issues. So there's that trading aspect, and Goldman did jump in and want to do trading on it, but yeah, I'm going to leave my thoughts otherwise. Sir?
So I think that you guys have hit a lot of nails on the head. I'm just curious your thoughts on, I mean, the Jamie Dimon quote's top of mind for me, where I've had clients that showed up and be like, oh, let's do blockchain this and Bitcoin that. I'm like, hold it, what are you trying to solve? Let's back into the problem. 3 weeks ago it was at 3,700. Today it's at like 4,800. The volatility of it all, how you're going to actually price your services. How do you look at that price on a per Bitcoin, per Ethereum level and go, you know, eventually it'll solve itself and become a, you know, within a spectrum of reasonable pricing? I guess to simplify the question, is that thing just way too expensive, or do you guys think the sky's the limit? I'm just curious your thoughts when you have people coming to you for Bitcoin advice. Are you guys, you look at it and go, man, that's going to be an interesting bubble to watch burst, or do you think that they'll start chopping this thing up into micro bits?
Well, people don't come to me for Bitcoin advice, so that's pretty
Okay,
easy.
fair enough.
So,
I am not a registered investment advisor, so I do not give financial advice.
Classic lawyer disclaimers, here we go.
So it's interesting. Part of this is speculation that's happening right now, right? A lot of speculation. You've seen the creation of a lot of Bitcoin and Ethereum millionaires over the past couple years. Part of it is, you know, supply and demand, right? Because there is a finite number of Bitcoin or Ethereum that is put out into the world, and if there's enough demand for it, the price will go up. Part of it is like, what is money, right? Money is whatever we trust is money. You know, it's crazy. You know, if I knew, I think I would be a very rich person, but I'm not. I think Bitcoin is probably going to be a little bit more stable in the coming future. Ethereum has gotten a lot of mass adoption. At the same time, I personally have some concerns with how it's architected, how it works. And right now, a lot of the ICOs that are going on, when they raise money, a lot of them are raising on Ethereum. And they're going to need to cash out this Ethereum for like US dollars or, you know, Japanese yen or wherever they are as operating capital. And so they're going to need to sell that supply back onto the market. So that part makes me a little bit nervous about Ethereum in, you know, mid to late 2018.
and that is time, 10 more seconds?
No, I wouldn't say that's exactly where the rubber will hit the road, is that point of conversion, and that's where we'll see.
So please join me in welcoming or thanking, I should say, our panelists, and I don't know what's next, but
Thanks for
thank you.
staying awake.